Welcome to the Crypto Podcast. You can find all our episodes on thecryptopodcast.org. You find everything about me. You can scan the QR code, or you can actually go to roycollin.com, where you see my 6 podcasts and also everything I'm doing with coaching and helping people get on shows. If you're looking for a virtual assistant, go to va.world. And we're currently doing an offer where we're doing websites for $300. So be sure to check it out. My guest. He's a junior partner and asset protection attorney at Corporate Direct in Reno, Nevada, where he works alongside his father, Garrett Sutton. He specializes in business law, focusing on the formation and maintenance of corporations and in LLCs for entrepreneurs, real estate investors, and digital asset investors nationwide. He is known for delivering high-value legal solutions that combine regulatory compliance with personalized client service, helping clients strategically protect their assets and avoid personal liability. He's also played a key role in educating business owners about the new Corporate Transparency Act, which requires companies to report ownership information to the federal government. Please welcome Ted Sutton.
Right on. Well, thanks for having me on, Roy.
No problem at all. I suppose let's kind of learn a little bit about yourself first. I mean, obviously inspired by your dad, you kind of got into the same thing, but what was it like growing up with your dad and then getting into the business? How did that work out?
Yeah. So it's interesting because, I've spent my entire life around him, but he never forced me to get into the business. I actually, in college, I got a degree in mining engineering, so I was not planning on being a lawyer at all. But I worked at a mine in Chile, great experience, but it made me realize I didn't want to be a miner. And I graduated, and my dad sat down and talked with me, and he said, look, you're not finding work. If you want, you could become a lawyer, go to law school, and take over my practice. And when I reached that juncture, it just kind of hit me. It was like a light bulb just went off. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do that. And so I made that decision to go to law school, and I've never looked back since. So it's interesting because he never forced me to go to law school. He always kind of had this thought in the back of his mind that maybe one of his kids can take over the practice. And so he kind of just slowly eased my way into it. And here I am. So, it's a really interesting story because I was never expected to be a lawyer, but now it's been 7 years since I graduated college, and here I am.
And how do you navigate kind of daddy-son relationship and also not talking shop when you're together, when you're kind of visiting?
That's right. No, that's a great question. So it helps that we work on separate floors. So I'm in his old office upstairs, and he took an office downstairs. So we don't spend a whole lot of time around each other, which helps. But overall, we have a good relationship. I mean, he's a mentor. He gives me leeway to do what I want, but if I need advice on something, I can always go to him. And then outside of work, we are a pretty tight family. We spend a lot of time together. We eat dinners together. But we're capable of talking about other things outside of work. And so I think that's a really healthy relationship to have. Because if it's just about work all the time, I mean, you're going to go crazy. So, we have kind of a routine that we have to sort of have a business relationship and have a family relationship outside of work.
Yep, excellent. And I suppose before we delve into the kind of crypto things and everything, because I was looking at some of your videos and like some are your own, but some is with your father, and that's very nice. You can see there's a very good bond there. But usually in your industry, people would have like 10 views and maybe 100 subscribers. But you've actually got a massive YouTube following, subscribers and views. I have it written down there somewhere. It's really good. And how did you create that? Because it's not the norm.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. In all honesty, it wasn't me. What happened was my dad started the YouTube channel 11 years ago, and he would post videos very rarely, maybe once a year, once every few months. But there was one video by Tom Wheelwright, and it's titled How to Legally Not Pay Taxes. And as you can imagine, that got a lot of views and a lot of subscribers. And so that really gave us a boost there. Then about 2 years ago, I took over the channel just because it had 24,000 subscribers then. And I'm going, Dad, like you're sitting on a gold mine. How have you not posted videos consistently? Um, but he's in his 70s now, and there's sort of an age gap and a generational gap. And so I took that over 2 years ago, and I've been posting videos once a week. And since then, the channel's gradually grown over time. So it wasn't all me. I did have a foundation in place beforehand, but at the end of the day, it's important for people to get good information on business law and asset protection, and that's what I'm seeking to do with the channel.
And I mean, I have my own channel for all my podcasts, but I have a Polish one as well. And I took that over from someone and just made it well. But I've seen people doing the same. Sometimes people can destroy a channel. So it's not easy to maintain it and grow it. So that's, congratulations on doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not easy, but in this day and age, you need to have a social media presence in order to sort of grow your profile and get business and help other people. So I view it as a necessity and something that's part of my job. And, because of that, it's allowed me to be consistent and successful.
So, crypto. First, I'd like to know your own blockchain. And is it you that kind of brought this into the company?
hmm Yeah, well, it's kind of a combination of some things. In the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen the increase of blockchain technology. And on top of that, we've seen people use cryptocurrency just as sort of an alternative asset to the monetary system and, stocks and gold and things like that. So it was kind of a combination of that. And then me being a younger guy, understanding that a lot of people invest in crypto. And so we have a lot of people who refer people our way who are big into the crypto space. And, I own some crypto myself. But yeah, I think it's just a combination of just market trends and then me being a younger guy, sort of encouraging our business to accommodate people in the crypto space.
So I saw, there was a few things that I saw and I thought, okay, they're interesting. So you kind of, like you were saying, to set up an LLC. Well, obviously, if you have the LLC and then get the crypto is one thing. So you might explain why they should set up an LLC and then the transfer process.
Right. So it's important to hold title to your assets in an LLC. And the reason being is that if you hold title to assets in your individual name and you get personally sued, if you lose in court, a judge and you get a judgment against you, a judge could order you to sell your assets. So if you have stocks, gold, crypto that's in your individual name, the judge could force you to sell them to satisfy any judgment against you. However, if you put it in an LLC, those assets are much more difficult to reach. So, if you lose in court, and unfortunately, at least in America, it's a very litigious society, so you run a real risk there. So if you lose in court and the assets are in an LLC, they're much harder to reach. A judge can't force you to sell those assets to satisfy any judgment. Usually what happens is they can get a charging order on your LLC. And what that means is if you make any distributions out of it, that victim can collect, that creditor can collect. But the nice thing is in an LLC, you have the control whether or not distributions are made. And so if you don't make any distributions out of it, that person has to sit there and wait. And they don't like that. And another thing is that their attorney doesn't like that either, because attorneys usually work on a contingency fee basis. So they collect 35%, 30 to 35% of any judgment. But if they don't collect anything, they're just going to move on to the next case. So the biggest thing is that you need to have it in an LLC. Just the biggest takeaway, if it's in your individual name, it's much more easy for a judge to force you to sell it. But if it's in an LLC, it puts up a fortress and it makes it harder for that victim to reach those assets.
And because like in Ireland, it's kind of similar. You're kind of protected in a company. But I personally, I learned the hard way in Poland that I was the president of a lot of companies, and the president is personally liable. So when things with the property market went bad, I was like liable. So it depends on the country that you're in. So how does the person then who has their crypto put it in? What's the process for actually putting it into the LLC?
Right. So there's a specific process that you have to follow. So the first thing you'll need to do is you'll need to set up the LLC. And we like setting it up in Wyoming because of that charging order protection that I discussed. You'll then get an EIN number from the IRS, and you'll use that to set up a separate bank account for your LLC. We help with the LLC formation and getting the EIN number for your LLC. You'll then set up a separate bank account for it. Then, if you have any crypto in your individual name, you'll need to prepare a transfer agreement to transfer all of that crypto from your individual name into an LLC. And, we have transfer agreements. I mean, you'll need to prepare them yourself, but we have templates that you can use. And what they do is they list out all the crypto, and then at the bottom, you get a notarized signature. And it's important to have that notary because it acts as a timestamp for when your crypto transferred from your individual name into the LLC. So having that process in place is key, just because if you do it all ahead of time before any lawsuit happens in the future, you're going to be much better protected.
And because when I was looking, there was Wyoming, there was some other country that you went as well, and it said something about a franchise fee for one of the states. Well, what? I never heard of that before. What is that?
Yeah, so each state, the nice thing about the U.S. is that the states are the laboratories of democracy. So on a lot of issues, states compete with each other in certain areas, and corporate law is one of them. So Wyoming's great for LLCs just because you have privacy because your name isn't listed on the Secretary of State's website, and it's an affordable option too. But they do have a franchise fee for assets that are held inside the Wyoming LLC. It's a very, very small fraction. But it's just a fee that they have just to collect money from the state. So each state varies. They have different filing fees and franchise fees, but that's just one of them in Wyoming.
There was another thing I heard you talk about, and I wasn't aware. Personally liable for setting up a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization. Let me touch on that.
Yeah, so DAOs are a new entity type. They stand for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And so what they are is it's an LLC, but they can be managed by an algorithm. So usually it's on the blockchain network. We like staying away from newer entity types. Series LLCs are one of them, and then the DAO is another one. So it could be good in the future, but there's just a lot of uncertainty surrounding them. And because of that, we just like sticking with the tried and true method of a regular LLC.
And do you touch on kind of asset protection, as in like for inheritance? Because it's something that I've touched with a few people on previous guests, but everyone's got their own way. And the problem is, whether it's with an accountant or with a solicitor, sometimes there's fraud there as well. So sometimes, you could put it in a will, give the seed phrase to somebody. And if something happens that you want your loved ones to have your crypto assets, have you a way of kind of doing it that it protects the owner, and at the same time allows them to pass it on?
Right. So when it comes to passing assets and your estate on to your children or your beneficiaries, we like setting up trusts to do that. And the benefit there is that if you hold it in a trust, you avoid the probate process, at least in the US. And so what probate is somebody dies and then they have to go into probate court and the judge decides who gets what assets. It could be time consuming. It could be emotionally draining. And attorneys make a killing in probate. So you want to just avoid that at all costs by setting up a trust ahead of time. Now, when it comes to estate taxes and inheritance, usually what happens is the beneficiaries get a step up in basis. So what happens there is that somebody dies, they hold the assets during their lifetime. After their death, they get a step up in basis, and then the kids inherit the property or the asset at that stepped up basis. And the benefit there is that you can avoid paying capital gains tax if you sell it. So, if you have a $100,000 house, let's say you bought a house for 100 grand, it appreciates in value to 500 grand, and then you pass. In that case, your basis was 100,000, but then after your passing, it increases to 500,000. And when it goes to your kids, they get a step up basis to 500,000 instead of 100,000. So that's just an example of proper estate planning and using trusts. But the main thing with trusts is that you avoid probate, and it's a way to utilize the step up basis. Well, you can do it without a trust, but anyway, hold it in your estate during your lifetime. You get a step up in basis when people inherit it. So that's just kind of a whole separate area on top of asset protection.
Yeah, no, because I'm hearing a lot about the trust and some people irrevocable, and yeah, I mean the probate, even in Ireland, that sometimes takes like a year and a half, and
Yep. Same in the US. I mean, it can be a nightmare. And I went into probate court for one of my relatives, and the judge handled cases before us, and there was mismanagement. People were irresponsible. And I got to see the judge chew out a few people. And so that wasn't that pleasant because I was afraid he was going to chew me out too. But that's just how it is. I mean, it's a very emotional process, and people just don't know what they're getting into.
with trust, because I've heard of different ones, and even on there was a person talking about a trust for capital gains, but they were looking at really high end doing it. And then I've heard of other people, because I get people on the Awakening one talking about trust and everything. And sometimes people are saying you just, once you have it written and you write it yourself, that it works.
Uh-huh.
How, going deep, what exactly is needed to create a trust? Is it really expensive or what's it? Because I'm getting all different answers on a
Yeah.
trust.
Great question. So a lot of it depends on the type of trust that you set up. So there's two different types of trust. One is a revocable trust, and that's a trust that you set up and you can make changes to during your lifetime. That's more affordable, and you can easily make changes to it. So if you buy new assets or you have a falling out with one of your kids, you can make changes before your death. The irrevocable trust is a trust that you can't change after you set it up. And so those come in handy when you have a lot of assets and everything set in stone, and you also have a higher net worth. So with the irrevocable trust, they're a lot more expensive to set up than a revocable trust. And that's just because there's a lot more management that goes into it. I mean, usually there are times where the trust pays its own taxes, so you need to have a financial advisor or a CPA manage that. And they hold title to more assets too. So it depends on the type of trust that you set up. Revocable trusts are more affordable and you can make changes to it, but irrevocable trusts are a lot more costly to form and manage. But they provide asset protection, and they just provide additional administrative benefits. So it just depends.
So, like you mentioned, paying the tax, because a lot of times people are claiming that by putting something into a trust, you get around from tax and everything. So that's not true. That's not the case.
And there's a lot of misinformation around that. We get a lot of calls from people thinking they need a trust when in reality they just need an LLC. And we also get people who think they need an irrevocable trust, but those usually come into play when you have a really high net worth. So there's certain thresholds that need to be met, in my opinion. And in a lot of cases, I think having a revocable trust is good, but in a lot of cases, I don't necessarily think everyone needs to have an irrevocable trust.
Enough. And we talked about the crypto, but and still kind of blockchain, but do you ever kind of touch on like meme coins or NFTs?
Not really. A lot of the clients we help out mainly just hold title to cryptocurrencies. So, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Solana, XRP, things of that nature. So, not so much NFTs. I know there was a spike a few years ago. I haven't heard as much. I think it was 2022 is when there was a big spike there. But yeah, for the most part, people come to us and they want to set up an LLC just to protect their cryptocurrency.
And just because I've got 50% of my listeners are in the States, the rest. And do you deal with foreigners setting up an LLC, and do they need an American to be part of the company, or can they actually set it up as a foreigner?
They can set it up as a foreigner. A lot of the people we help, they're foreign nationals, but they like investing in real estate in the US. Um, I think if you wanted to set up a Wyoming LLC, you could, but you are going to be subject to the U.S. tax laws, so it may not be best for everyone. But I think just depending on people's situation and depending how comfortable they are investing in the U.S., a Wyoming LLC for their crypto could be an option.
And because I know, because I've got a lot of friends from America, but basically even when they're living, anywhere in the world, their income is taxable in the States. So is it just whatever you do in the LLC as a foreigner, or does it bring you into that same kind of thing that all your income then is taxable in the States?
I think a portion of it would be. I mean, if you live in Poland, obviously you have Polish business in Poland. You'd be subject to the Polish taxes there. But if you have any assets outside of Poland, like Ireland or the U.S. or Canada or wherever else, I think the tax trees would apply, and I think a portion of that would be subject to the U.S. But I'm not a tax expert. I think for tax questions, you just double check with a CPA who's familiar with foreign tax laws, and they can guide you through that.
Fair enough. Yeah. So, Corporate Transparency Act. You might let me know a bit about it.
Oh, God. Yeah, I don't know if you want to know about it, but since we're here, I can talk about it.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, President Trump and the Department of Treasury have put this on hold. But what the law aimed to do was it aimed to combat any sort of money laundering, terrorist financing, illegal activity. And so, what it required to do is if you had a business in the U.S., like an LLC, a corporation, limited partnership, anything like that, you are required to report information to the U.S. Department of Treasury, information relating to the entity itself as well as its beneficial owners. And the penalty for not following the law is that you could face up to $10,000 in fines and or 2 years in jail if you willfully ignored it. So it was a law. It was kind of like Big Brother pretty much, but it had some really significant teeth to it if you didn't comply. So understandably, a lot of our clients were upset about it, and we weren't keen on this law either. But last year, we hired people to do all the filings for our clients. We have 14,000 entities under management. So that was a huge nightmare. But luckily, President Trump and the Department of Treasury said they're not going to enforce this law, which I think is good just because it's ineffective. If you had all these criminals conducting illegal activity through Wyoming LLCs, they're not going to report that information anyway. They're already breaking the law. Are they going to comply with another one? No, of course not. And so all the law-abiding mom and pop business owners and good faith investors are the ones who bore the burden there. Now, it's on pause right now, but we'll see what happens in the future. A Democrat could win in 2028, and in that case, it could be back on the table. So the law is a huge nightmare. It's on pause right now, but it could come back in the future, and I think people need to be aware of that.
And, what's your thoughts on crypto regulation? Because I know it's very good.
Yeah, I don't really have a strong opinion on that. I think crypto, it's newer, And so with a lot of newer things, I don't really make a knee-jerk reaction to anything quite yet. Um, I think we're gonna have to wait and see. I think crypto is a nice alternative to just the system we have in place. But I'm not really sure just regarding any specific regulations. I think we're just gonna have to wait and see.
And just yourself, because you said you're into crypto, I always like to ask what wallet you'd recommend and any exchange that you find better than others.
Yeah. So that's an interesting question just because when you set up an LLC to hold title to crypto, I recommend setting up a business bank account. And, companies like Coinbase and Kraken have business accounts. But the thing is their requirements for getting one are really stringent. So I'm not I'm not for or against any specific platform. I found their requirements to opening up an account are actually quite difficult. Um, but I mean, I think it's helpful to have crypto in place just as an alternative to what we're seeing. So again, not really for or against any specific platform.
I just think, I think that's kind of happening internationally anyway, bank accounts, because before it used to be very easy to open a bank account, whether if it's for business or individual. And it's now so difficult. The amount of people like I'd be talking to, and I mean, I've done it myself. I had a lot of companies, and there's some people, they just give in. They just say, look, this is too much work.
I know. Well, and that's kind of in the spirit of the Corporate Transparency Act too, is that the government's tightening their regulations and they want to know more about people's private affairs. And it's an unfortunate trend, and I think it's unnecessary.
And yeah, just, I mean, I think I've covered most of the stuff. I'm just wondering, is there anything else in the crypto that you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, well, I think crypto, it's a good asset to have just because it could be a store of value and it's just a hedge against all the uncertainty we're facing. But at the end of the day, it's best to hold title to your crypto in an LLC because, at least in America, it's an extremely litigious society. And if you hold these assets in your individual name and you lose a lawsuit, they're much more easier to reach. And so, having your crypto, your gold, your silver, your stocks, your real estate in LLCs will provide you much better protection when you're subject to a lawsuit.
And with Wyoming, because like say Poland, you're paying the corporation tax no matter what, and say Ireland or whatever. But I have a Estonian company, and you don't, you can leave it there. With assets in Wyoming, is there corporation tax, or how
No.
does it? No.
Yeah, so there's two different type of purposes for business. So one is an active purpose, and that's where you set up a business to employ yourself and other people. And so there, at least in the US, there's two types of taxation. There's the C corp, which has the double tax, so that's where the corporate tax comes into play. And then there's also the S corp, which is a vehicle. It only faces one level of tax, but you use it to minimize any payroll tax for your employees. So that's the active business. And then the second type of business is a passive business. And that's where you don't set salaries for anyone, you don't pay any corporate income tax, but you use those businesses like LLCs to hold title to assets. And in that case, usually all the business income, if you generate, if something appreciates in value or you generate rental income, that just flows on to your individual return. And so for crypto and stocks and things of that nature, it's more of a passive business. And that just flows on to your individual return. And you don't have to pay any of the corporate income tax or the payroll tax with the active.
No, excellent. Listen, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think you've provided great value to the listeners. You might let the listeners know where they can find you.
For sure. So you can find us at corporatedirect.com. We just launched a brand new website, beautifully done. The guy we hired did a great job. But we also have product specific packages for people who want to invest in crypto and other assets. So we have a package, it's called Digital Guard, where we set up a Wyoming LLC and we give you a template with the transfer agreement. and it's specifically tailored for crypto investors. So, go to corporatedirect.com. Feel free to do research on your own. We have a lot of good resources on the website. And then you can schedule a free 15-minute consultation with one of our paralegals who can help you get the Digital Guard package set up.
No, excellent. And make sure I put the links both on the audio and the video. Thank you very much, Ted.
Sounds good. Nice meeting you, Roy.
You too. So that's all for the Crypto Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on thecryptopodcast.org. You find everything about me. Scan the QR code or go to roycollin.com where you find the 6 podcasts, along with my podcast coaching and everything else I do. If you're looking for a virtual assistant, go to va.world, and we're currently offering websites for $300. Until next week, take care.